Yo, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video. I am going to go over some system requirements that I find absolutely insane and kind of ridiculous. Before we get into the video, a quick word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, which is the upgraded release of SMT5 available now on PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and Steam. If you're looking for a game with punishingly difficult but at the same time incredibly rewarding gameplay, look no further than Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. And with the game, you've got two playable routes. The original Canon of Creation component was in the original game, but new to Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance is the Canon of Vengeance component, which will add replayability and give you a reason to play through the game if you already played the original. And on top of all of that, the great gameplay, the challenging gameplay, you'll have a heavy soundtrack to go into it as well. The game is on sale right now, directly available on Steam, and is also available on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and of course Steam. Check out the link in the description box below. On a surface level, if you just look at the system requirements, you're gonna be like, hey, this doesn't look too crazy if you actually look at the specific components, because guess what? The system requirements that they've outlined aren't that crazy as far as the specific components, because that's usually what people look at. People don't usually look at the nuances attached to system requirements, and this is something that I've been parroting for literally like a decade at this point. There is a fundamental issue with a lot of publishers and developers when it comes to outlining system requirements. You have a general criteria that's been established in PC gaming for a long time that, to be fair, a lot of developers and publishers have also pushed back on and offer several tiers of system requirements. But generally speaking, what a lot of developers, and I've noticed this from the Japanese developers, especially Japanese publishers, is that they are still adopting the minimum required specifications and the recommended required specifications. Now, with Monster Hunter Wilds, it only has 2 tiers of system requirements, which is already a problem. However, the game is still 5 months away, to be fair, so they could adjust this, and things can change by February 28th. I would venture to guess things won't change, but we got 5 months. But the problem with just adopting a minimum and recommended system requirements is, what does that verbiage actually mean? It doesn't mean anything. There isn't an actual criteria that minimum specifications are filtered for, that recommended specifications are designed for. It is really YOLO, let's just put whatever we want. Sometimes we'll illustrate some specific things, but there's no actual adopted measurement of what is recommended system requirements, what is minimum system requirements, and at the very least with Monster Hunter Wilds and these system requirements, they are outlining what resolution you are to expect and what frame rate you are to expect with the minimum and recommended system requirements. That at the very least is something that every tier of system requirements should adopt, because nobody knows what recommended actually means. Nobody knows what minimum actually means. One would think minimum would be the actual minimum requirement to run a game, but all of us have realized that that is usually not the case. For a lot of games, you could go even lower. I digress. With Monster Hunter Wilds, a really bad precedent is actually being set, because let's first go over the minimum required specifications. 1080p at 30 frames per second. I don't have a problem with that for a minimum required specifications. 1080p 30 FPS makes a lot of sense. It's looking at an i5 10600 and 16 gigabytes of memory and a GTX 1660 Super. They also note that SSD is required. This game is expected to run at 1080p, upscaled from 720p at native resolution at 30 FPS under the lowest graphics setting. I don't have too big of a problem with that. The territory that we're getting with utilizing upscaling as a form of measurement within system requirements, I do think that ultimately can lead to issues, but I don't find this to be as big of an issue when you talk about minimum requirements. Recommended requirements is really where I have an issue. 1080p full HD is what is noted at the resolution. 60 frames per second with frame generation enabled. Double whammy there. First of all, while it's not upscaled, in no way should recommended in the year 2024 be 1080p. In no way should 1080p be the recommended requirements. And I know there's this resolution breakdown on how many people are playing on what resolution. I know there's a lot of people playing games at 1080p. That still does exist. However, the people that are picking up a game like Monster Hunter Wilds, a brand new title that is visually demanding, a large portion of those people are going to be playing at a higher resolution than 1080p. How can 1080p be the standard for recommended specifications? Not only that, you're talking 60 FPS with frame generation enabled. Look, I find the AI technology to be fascinating, and I really think there's a lot to it in terms of the future of game development. However, it is still shoddy. DLSS, I think, is incredible. Frame generation, I personally have had a lot of issues with things like artifacting and just sloppy performance. I tried it with Marvel Spider-Man. I think it was Miles Morales that I tried it with, and it was just not a great experience with frame generation enabled. And that was my isolated experience. However, I know a lot of people have had the same experience, but even if you remove frame generation, the issue with 1080p still being recommended, this is a huge problem. On top of that, we'll get to the system requirements in a little bit, the exact components. This game is expected to run at 1080p 60 FPS with frame generation enabled under the medium graphics setting. What? Medium settings, 1080p, not even real 60 FPS. I hate to say the term real 60 FPS because if frame generation is working perfectly and you're getting 60 FPS, that's a real 60 FPS to me. But you get what I'm saying. Frame generation is still a little bit shoddy at times, and medium settings 1080p, especially considering if you look back to Monster Hunter World, that wasn't the best PC version from my recollection. It had a lot of connection issues at launch, if I recall correctly. That was so long ago, summer of 2018, so my memory's a little bit foggy with that, but we cannot be letting this slide where you're docking down these recommended specifications to 1080p, not real 60 FPS, frame generation 60 FPS, and then medium settings as well. At the very least, if you're gonna do something like this, I don't have a problem with it if you have 4 or 5 tiers of system requirements. For this, it is just misleading because I know how people are. A lot of people just read the processor requirement, the memory requirement, the graphics card requirement, and they're like, oh, goody, I'm well over that. I'll run this game at 4K. Brother, you ain't gonna be running this game at 4K unless you got a monster PC looking at it, especially 4K maxed out at 60 FPS. I am going to be very, very curious to see how this game runs on consoles. Maybe it'll run fairly well on the PlayStation 5 Pro, I don't know, but in this case, a RTX 2070 Super or an RTX 4060 is noted for this recommended requirement. That is 1080p 60 FPS medium. What do we need if we're playing at a 4K medium? Like, not even 4K Ultra or 4K High, 4K medium. That is orders of magnitude more demanding than 1080p at 60 FPS. You know, you could upscale it from 1080p and get higher resolutions with DLSS, but there's a limit to that, and there's a cap on that as far as what you can do. So are you expecting, if I'm playing at 4K, I gotta put on DLSS, gotta use frame generation, and then that at 4K, how is that gonna run? We should have a tier of system requirements, and it's just something like this in 2024, we really gotta get rid of it, and I really do think, as great as Steam is, one area that I think they are lacking is the fact that in their system requirements section for a lot of these major titles, they only have minimum and recommended listed. They need to get to a point where there's like a scroller, you scroll to the right, and then they have more tiers of system requirements, because this 2-tiered system requirements settings or specifications, this needs to be abolished. This is so archaic, and I was saying it was archaic in the year 2015 where you saw more resolutions being utilized. It's even more archaic now because there's people playing at 1080p, there's people playing at 1440, people playing at 4K, people playing on the Steam Deck, people playing on the ROG Ally. We just need more tiers of system requirements to make an educated guess. And even this, if you're gonna have 2 tiers of system requirements, the recommended being 1080p, frame generation enabled to get 60 FPS, and not even high settings, medium graphics settings, is wild to me. Like, this cannot be the standard, and we need to get to a point where 3, 4, 5 tiers of system requirements. Shout out to Sony, as sometimes trash as they are, they always have multiple tiers of system requirements. A lot of the Microsoft games do. Alan Wake 2, I believe, did. I feel like the majority of publishers these days do have multiple tiers. However, for a game that's gonna be as demanding as Monster Hunter Wilds, having 2 tiers of system requirements, absolutely inexcusable. You can't be having that, and maybe they'll change it by February, and if they do, I will be happy to be wrong. But even if they do, this recommended tier is just so wild, given that it's 1080p, 60 FPS,
with frame generation enabled and medium graphics. That should not be recommended. The only way you can let something like this get away with recommended is if you do have multiple tiers and we can have a better idea and a better gauge. If they do drop multiple tiers of system requirements, I will obviously do an updated video, but it's also a question of, frame generation not available in every GPU. You're talking about the RX 6700 XT being recommended as well. That's something to consider, and in future generations, if you talk about AI enhancements being locked behind certain generations of graphics cards, that's a problem as well, but that's pushing the cart before the horse a little bit too much, but it's something to consider and definitely a conversation worth having that I don't think a lot of people are going to have. But that's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. And, again, most publishers these days, most devs, I feel like do a good job of having 4 to 5 tiers of system requirements, but the ones that are still rocking with 2, we got a problem here, especially when it's this much nonsense with the recommended requirements. Again, that'll do it for me. Your thoughts down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush here again. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you guys might know, YouTube's notification system is sometimes a little bit wonky, even if you're subscribed to the channel. Maybe you're not abundantly aware that I uploaded a video. To remedy that situation, make sure you hit the bell notification button. This way, whenever I upload a new video, and I try to upload as consistently as possible, you will be notified directly of the upload, and you can watch it as soon as it goes live. I would really appreciate if you guys hit that button so you can stay up to date with all of the content I'm posting. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.